So hi, and welcome to our AskTOM Office Hours session on advanced compression and basic table compression. We're here to answer your questions, explore all things you want to know about advanced compression and basic compression. All your lines are muted, so please use the chat if you have any questions. Remember, we can't discuss any SRs or licensing issues. Also, if you post code into chat, remember that everyone can see it unless you direct it specifically to the host. So we can begin. So we didn't have any pre-questions posted before the session, so if anybody has any questions currently, feel free to ask those via chat. We'll give it a second here. Then I have this may not be a very long session, but I have a couple questions for you, Jesus, if you don't mind. We'll give it a second here, see if there's anything new. If not, let's see, where are you at there? Turn on your, okay, so we should be, there you go. Hi, Ajit.
Hi, Brett.
So I just basically did the intro. We don't have any questions prior to this, so I opened up to see if anybody has any questions for us right now through the chat session. If not, I do have a couple questions myself that have come up in the recent couple of days I can run past you guys. Other than that, it may not be a very long session if we don't get any other questions. So I guess one question that came up this week, in fact, I think is, and this will be useful, you know, these things are recorded, so the recording will be available afterwards, and a lot of people look at those. One of the questions came up, and I don't know whether Ajit or Jesus, whether this is you, is the differences, you know, we all know the difference, one of the major differences between basic compression and advanced row compression is that basic compression only compresses during the initial bulk load and doesn't maintain the compression for, you know, DML inserts and updates later on. And I guess one of the questions came up, and this is one I hadn't really thought about, is there any fundamental differences in the way we handle the compressed data in terms of, do we uncompress the basic compression or we don't uncompress the advanced row compression? Is there anything fundamentally about how we manage the data once it's compressed in terms of moving it around, when it gets uncompressed, does it stay compressed in memory? That is the difference between the basic compression and advanced row compression.
Jesus, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, let me see if I get the question correctly. So fundamental differences between advanced row compression and basic compression, besides the fact that both of them compress the data blocks, right? And the workload is different. One is based on DMLs, and well, I was thinking in ADO and how this changes the way we manage our data. I see basic compression as a way to compress data in a planning way. Like you have some segments, some tables, or some data that you know is not moving a lot. It's like cold data, so you can go and compress that table segment with basic compression. But advanced row compression is triggered for different scenarios where we want an active transaction scenario happening on the data, and so the data is changing all the time. So I don't know if that sort of answers the question, or probably.
I think so. I think from a usage standpoint, definitely. I was thinking one thing, and I'll tell you where this question came up, is that a customer is using it. They use basic compression, and for some reason they thought it wasn't staying compressed in memory. And I don't think there's any difference between how we handle advanced row compression and basic compression. That so
for both,
does that sound?
For both basic compression and advanced compression, the blocks are kept compressed in memory.
Okay.
So when we bring the blocks into the buffer cache, we do not decompress them.
All right. That's what I kind of thought as well. There is a question here, and you may catch us a little off guard here, the question, because neither one of us is that familiar with XE yet. Are there already experiences, estimations of how much basic advanced compression can help to stay within the limits of 18C/XE? Okay, so I think the question that neither one of us, part of the answer is that we don't know much. I'm speaking for you guys, and I apologize for that, but I don't know much about XE in terms of whether advanced compression is included with it, or is it an option, or what? Do either of you guys have a sense of that one either, or no? I don't have a sense of that right now.
Do you mean XC as the database edition?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
As far as I know, the advanced compression option comes from one edition, right? From I don't know if I don't know if it is available in XE.
Okay. Yeah.
You may know that, or
I have to apologize myself. I don't know either. The answer, I guess, one way. Oh yes. Oh, thank you. It is available. So it will depend upon. Is it an option or is it included? To Sven, is it an option or
Well,
included?
it's an option. Well, advanced compression option is an option for the enterprise edition. So it's definitely it doesn't come with the by default. It has to be. If it is available, it's an option.
Okay. That's what I assumed. So I guess the answer would be. I mean, I don't think the answer for XE is any different than from Enterprise Edition. Is that the amount of compression you get is dependent upon the amount of duplication that exists in the data. Does that sound reasonable to you guys as well?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's. I mean, it's no different than that. Is that the greater amount of duplication that exists in the data, the greater amount of compression you'll see. The more unique data, the less compression you'll see. So I don't think from a standpoint it's any different from any other platform we run on in terms of like Enterprise Edition. So if it's there, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, one difference is that basic compression is available without any restriction in those editions. So okay,
that's cool. And he said, no, like other EE options, it's available on XE. The question is more like how big of a factor to expect when non-basic advanced compression can be used when non-basic advanced.
I think
okay, so
what you mean is the compression factor. Is that what you mean?
I suspect the compression ratio.
Yeah, compression ratio.
Yeah. So, I mean, just like, thank you for the answer about XE. So, like anything else, the compression ratio for advanced compression and for basic compression are pretty similar in terms of about 2 to 4x. So 2x compression would be about a 50% reduction in your footprint. So again, it's hard to predict. One thing you can do is you can run Compression Advisor, which is included in the database. It's a dbms_compression. You can run that. It's free. You don't need to license anything for that. You run Compression Advisor against your tables and partitions, and it'll give you an estimation of the compression ratio. And like I said, about 2 to 4x compression ratio, excuse me, is pretty typical for advanced compression and for advanced row compression and for basic compression. So I would expect to see pretty similar to that in terms of the average. It's how much duplication you partition, but definitely try dbms_compression, and it'll tell you your estimated compression ratio, and it's pretty accurate in what it does, and that'll give you an idea of what kind of compression to expect in terms of the compression ratio. So yeah, that was good. So any other questions about advanced compression or basic compression in terms of usage? One thing likewise, and it's kind of a different, slightly different topic, is also to look at the index compression. There's two kind of flavors of it, if you will. There's the free version, which is called prefix compression, and that's included with the database. You take a look at that. That averages about 2 to 3x compression ratio. And with advanced compression, there's something called advanced index compression, which averages about 3 to 5x or so, give or take, in terms of the compression ratio. Again, you can use an advisor to estimate your compression ratios for the indexes and for your lobs. So definitely take a look at that. And it's another way to sort of maximize your compression, right? Maximize your storage savings. Both the basic compression and the advanced row compression are data compression features, so they'll compress your data. If you want to compress your indexes, then you're looking at something called either prefix compression, again, which is free, or advanced index compression, which is included with the data, or advanced index compression, which is included with advanced compression option. So definitely take a look at one of those as well. But happy to take any other questions. I guess one of the questions, as we do, and this comes up quite a bit as well. Whenever we make changes to advanced compression, are those sort of included as part of basic compression, or is basic compression sort of where it's going to be at for a while now? It's in terms of it's really not going to change that much, and most of the effort is going into sort of advanced compression, I guess, in terms of the feature content or changes.
Well, I'll say that that there are changes that impact advanced row compression, but also there are changes that that are impacting basic compression. For example, in 12.2 we introduced wide table support. So we support chain row pieces within compression, and that also includes basic compression, not only advanced row compression. So it's not like one is obsolete. Both sides of compression are well supported, and certainly there are things that are enhanced for advanced row compression. For example, I believe in 18.1 we introduced an enhancement that speed ups inserts by 5x, and that affects advanced row compression specifically because it inserts as the nature of inserts, these are DML operations, so it's tied to advanced row compression in that sense.
Okay, that's good to know. And I guess another question that comes up, and these things come up quite a bit, is that our customers, when they think about enabling compression for existing tables, the two ways to do it online are online redef and alter table move online, and the alternative is to enable compression offline for existing tables. So I guess the question that comes up pretty frequently is there a difference? Would you expect any difference in terms of the compression ratio whether you enable compression online or offline? And I'll tell you, my answer to this has always been I would expect the compression ratio to be the same. But I like from you guys, have you ever heard of, or would you ever expect there to be a difference in the compression ratio depending how you enable compression for an existing table?
If I get the question correctly, the question is, do you enable compression offline or online? Is that the question?
And would you expect any difference between the two?
So the short answer is no. As in, compression is always online in the sense that, when people say offline, it basically means that the table is locked out for DMLs. Okay. So for example, you could be doing a DDL that's offline, or you could be doing a table redefinition that's offline, which basically means that we block DMLs on this table. Okay. Compression doesn't block DMLs on the table. You could, just, if you want to just turn on compression on the table, you could say alter table compress, and we just change some bits in the dictionary to say that the future data that's inserted into this table would be compressed. Okay. But that doesn't block any DMLs. Now, there is the other way of changing a table to be compressed. So what I just described was compressing data that would be inserted in the future. Okay. If you want to reorganize an existing table and compress all the data within the table, there are ways of doing table redefinition that's online.
Okay.
And that doesn't stop DMLs either. Okay.
Right.
So there are two ways of really turning on compression on a table. One is you just turn on compression and you say alter table compress, and future data would get compressed, and that doesn't have any effect on DMLs. Another way of doing it is to reorganize the entire table and compress pre-existing data as well as future data. And the way you do that is by using online redefinition. There's a PL/SQL package called dbms_redefinition, and you can do that online fashion. So that doesn't stop DML as well. Okay. Does that answer the question, or were you?
Yeah. No, I think it does. I think it does. It's there's always I've done a number of presentations to customers about best practices, and it almost guaranteed every time the question will come up, how should I be compressing the data for existing data? So I think that's good background information.
Yeah, I think the way you compress data for existing data is to do an alter table move, but the problem and alter table move has traditionally been an offline operation, which means that we block DMLs on this table. But there is an alter table move online.
Right. And that's new in 12C.
Right, exactly. So there's an alter table move online, or there is also a DBMS underscore redefinition, and that can be done online as well. So we encourage people to do this operation online. There's no need of blocking DMLs on this table.
Okay, great. That's great. That's great. So turning off compression, there's a no compress option for when you alter the table, you can say no compress. And is that effectively turning off compression and uncompressing the table, or is that just stopping compression for future SQL operations, inserts, updates, and things like that?
Jesus, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, well, it's the first thing you said. We basically won't compress any future data, but we are not redefining the table as.
Okay.
In order to do that, you will need to do to execute an alter table move or alter table move online, or what I just mentioned for the other question. Is very similar in that sense.
Okay. And is there any reason that you couldn't leave the table if you just did a no compress, and of course part of the table would be already going to compress state? Is it okay to leave it in that state without having to rebuild, or to rebuild the table, or is there any reason why you couldn't leave it in this sort of compressed state, but nothing new would be compressed in the future? There's any reason why you have to go through
I don't believe there's any fundamental problem with leaving the data as it is.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
And I know there's a way to turn on, you can enable compression on an existing table where it doesn't rebuild the table, it just turns on compression for new data. After you do a no compress, can you turn the compression back onto the table without rebuilding the table and just continue on from there? Or would you recommend rebuilding the whole table before you turn compression back on?
Yeah, well, that's up to the user scenario, right? But typically, if you want to just compress future data, you just turn on compression, but you don't rebuild the whole table. Otherwise, if you want to compress everything again and have everything compressed, then you alter the table to move all the data again.
Okay, that makes sense.
One fundamental difference between advanced row compression and basic compression is exactly this. With advanced row compression, the user doesn't need to care about DMLs affecting the segment in that area. But with basic compression, every time the user needs to recompress all the data, it will take more time with the time. So it will take more time with an increasing data set. So every time you do an alter table move, you're essentially recompressing all the segment, including all the blocks that were already compressed. So that consumes more time than just using advanced row compression in an incremental fashion.
That's interesting. Okay, that's interesting. One thing I just recalled about basic compression versus advanced row compression is that if I remember correctly, maybe this is prior to 11G, but at one point in time, I think with basic compression wasn't %free, sent for 0, and I'm not sure this has to do anything with the compression. So I think prior to 11G, maybe %free was set to 0, and after 11G, we set %free to 10. So with basic compression, people may have been seeing slightly higher compression because the blocks may have been more tightly packed. Does that ring any bells at all, or? I'm not quite sure I got that right.
Well, I don't know if Ajit knows the history before 11G, but as far as I know, we leave this 10% as with any other by default, right? by default.
Okay.
As with any other normal table, just for handling updates correctly without chaining and creating more scan bottlenecks in that sense. So I believe that with basic compression, just for cold data that would not be to be updated, probably a 0 PCT free would be okay. But then I understand why, with the introduction of advanced row compression, at that time called OLTP compression, or compression for all operations, why it was changed to 10% in order to satisfy this DML requirement. Okay,
that makes sense, because I've actually talked to a number of customers who have looked at basic compression for their cold data, and they'll set the percent free to 0 because they know they're never going to change the no inserts or updates or anything like that. And
that's okay.
Cold storage, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's
and it's cold storage for like 10-year storage or something like that.
Right.
Okay.
The whole point
the question came in
is to have some room in the block to hold the updates. That's all.
Okay, that makes sense. The question: can we switch on compression for a whole PDB? Do you guys know?
So the answer is no, unfortunately, and we can take that as an enhancement request if there is enough customer interest behind that. But essentially, you can turn on compression at a table space level. So if you have a bunch of table spaces, you need to turn on compression individually at the table space level, or you can turn on compression at the table level or the partition level or the sub-partition level, but you can't do it at the PDB level, not as far as I am aware of.
Okay. This brings up a good point for anybody attending, that if you have any thoughts about future enhancements you'd like to see for advanced compression, we'd love to hear about those, so feel free to add those to the chat as well. If you've used it and you've thought, it'd be better if it did this or that, we'd love to hear that as well. So feel free to add to chat any questions you have or suggestions you have about future enhancements. One question, and I'll put you guys on the spot, but if you don't have an answer to this, I understand, is that the question we get is a lot of times customers don't, when they're thinking about doing the enabling compression for existing table, is they're often kind of considering how long is this going to take, and it's there's always a number of factors involved in that. Is there any general rule of thumb that you have as suggestions in terms of how long you expect it to take to compress a table? Or is it really, there's so many different factors that may come into play that it's pretty hard to even have a rule of thumb, and it's just, it's best to maybe try it out and, test it on a system, test system and see how long it takes to compress maybe either the whole table or a portion of the table, and then sort of extrapolate it from there, I guess, because there's really no way to really estimate it on a easily. So any thoughts on that? Even if just speculation's fine. I realize that I'm kind of sticking on the spot, but it does come up.
For basic compression, it will take the whole table redefinition. It will take about the time it takes to insert all that data in a bulk load using the direct loader. So
that's interesting.
If you have a sense of time, like let's say it takes 1 minute to insert all your data uncompressed. So you know that it is in the same kind of magnitude that it will take to insert the same amount of data compressed.
Okay.
It's like a rule of thumb for that. And for advanced row compression, the story is a bit different, because it depends on how you're inserting your data. If you're inserting it one row at a time, that will be much slower than inserting, 1,000 or 10,000 rows at a time.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. I appreciate that. That's actually very useful. Let's see. Another question, and again, sort of one that comes up pretty frequently. There's often the debate. As I said, I do a lot of presentations about advanced row compression best practices, and a lot of times customers, one of the things they're most interested in is, and honestly, our answer to this has changed over time. So I'll see what you guys think, then I can tell you what we kind of say as well. Is the question comes up whether should we compress everything or not? And obviously, there's something you don't want to compress. You don't want to compress table longs. You don't want to compress Q tables and things like that. So excluding sort of what we already document that we shouldn't anyway. But the general feature is, and I guess the question is, even my small tables, assuming they would be candidates for compression because they're not part of the exclusionary list, should I compress even my smallest tables, or is it better to sort of stick with the largest tables and just draw a line somewhere and say I'm not going to compress anything that's after this size? So I guess your opinions on would you compress everything no matter the size, or would you sort of draw a line and say I'm not going to compress anything that's smaller than after the line I've sort of drawn?
Well, I'll take a stab at that. Apart from the usual caveats that you mentioned about, tables that behave like queues, or some of these tables that have longs and so on, yeah, I would just compress everything. I would turn on compression at the table space level, and I would just compress all the tables within that table space. Now, I think it's very difficult for customers to figure out which tables to compress and which tables not to compress. Just from a usability standpoint, I would say OLTP compression or advanced row compression works really well. And if you have a mixed OLTP workload, like you have you have a mixture of inserts, deletes, updates, and so on, we do not expect to see a large in fact, the guidance is that we expect to see less than 10% overhead. And compared to the disk savings that you get, which is about 2x to 4x, like you mentioned before, I think that's a pretty good trade-off. So you trade off 10% in time, and you get about 2x to 4x in disk space, right? Which is a great trade-off, in my opinion. So I would just turn it on at the table space level if I knew no better, right? And I would just go with that. Now, there are some caveats in the sense that if you have a table and you're doing only inserts into that table, then that is going to be, you're going to see an elapsed time of greater than 10%, right? You're going to see a greater than 10% increase in your elapsed time on that workload. But if you have a stable kind of workload where you have a mixture of inserts, deletes, updates, then I would just turn on compression at the table space level, and it should be fine in 99.9% of your cases. And it's just great because it saves you so much in disk space, and it just works. It's a great feature. It just works very smoothly, and we have kind of over the years we have worked on all the performance issues and all the bugs and all that stuff, and it's a really well sorted out feature right now.
Right. That's good. Thank you. So yeah, definitely I'd reiterate that is very stable, very heavily used feature, I guess, by a lot of our customers. So yeah, so give me a little, why I asked that question is years ago when I first started managing advanced compression, I think the general story was always, we used to tell customers, choose the largest tables first and compress those, and sort of decide if you want to compress the smaller ones later. And over time, based upon a lot of it based upon customer feedback as well, is that we really saw an advantage in compressing the smallest tables, in that it may not be a huge space savings. I mean, granted there is a space savings, but the customers felt there was a performance benefit for compressing even the smallest tables, and that reduced the number of blocks. It helps in terms of reducing the I/O. Small tables may become memory resident now, things like that. So there are some performance benefits above and beyond just the storage savings for even the smallest table. So I have to say, even ourselves, in our last couple of years, we sort of changed our story about this and have gone the route of we suggest now that everybody you compress everything, excluding the tables that are documented as do not compress. So thank you. Any other questions from our attendee? Any things you guys, Jesus, that anything you want to, any thoughts you have about best practices, any of that kind of stuff? Anything you want to throw in that would be great, or any thoughts in general about those things? I'll see if there's any more questions I have here.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that advanced row compression is one of those features, and in fact, not just advanced, but all the features that are bundled into the advanced compression option, they're all features that are very, very well sorted out. And a lot of customers use these features. So I would encourage people who are not using table compression, to go ahead and use it. And I'm pretty positive that you'll have a really good experience with the feature.
Right.
So that's something that I think I strongly feel that it's a very kind of polished feature. Yeah.
Right. And and you bring up kind of a good point about all the other capabilities of advanced compression. Is that one thing we have noticed over the years is that oftentimes customers buy advanced compression, are very happy with it, but are using mostly the data compression side of it. They're using either OLTP table compression or advanced row compression, and that's sort of the only thing they know about it, right? You talk to customers about advanced compression, and their whole view of what it is mostly just the data compression. But there are a number of capabilities, in fact, a large number of capabilities included with it that we often find that people who have bought the product or bought the option don't know exist. And we always try to make you aware of that. So I highly encourage you, if you're listening to this, to go to the Oracle Technology Network, go to the ACO page, and go on, I think it's Learn More section, and look at the Advanced Compression Data Sheet. The Advanced Compression Data Sheet goes through all the capabilities that are included, all the features, capabilities, whatever you want to call them, are included Advanced Compression option. And as Ajit mentioned, I mean, it goes beyond just simple data compression. There's index compression, there's lob compression, lob deduplication, there's RMAN backup compression, there's data pump data compression, see what's data guard redo transport compression, there's network compression, and some other capabilities about flashback data archive history table compression. I think it's some row level locking for hybrid columnar compression. So there's a lot of capabilities that we find our customers don't realize are there, even though they purchased the option. So if you've purchased advanced compression or are thinking about purchasing advanced compression, I highly encourage you to go to OTN, look at the advanced compression data sheet, and go through the list of features, because those are all capabilities that are included with it. And I probably failed to mention two of the biggest ones also is heat map and automatic data optimization, or ADO, which are ILM capabilities that work very well with advanced compression and hybrid columnar compression. So again, I can't encourage you enough to go look at the data sheet, become familiar with all the capabilities that are included with the option that you may have purchased or are thinking about it, and take a look at that. Also encourage you, if you're thinking about doing a proof of concept with advanced compression, two things to keep in mind. Go to OTN, again, go to the advanced compression page in OTN, and on the on the landing page of the advanced compression page, there's a proof of concept document on how to perform how to perform a POC, but also some of the things you should think about. And a lot of it is what we talked about today. Should I compress everything? What's the best method in order of compressing an existing table? Is there differences in terms of how we compress in terms of direct loads and conventional loads, path loads? It talks about a sample template for a POC. So it's a good background in terms of what we do in terms of compression, when we do it, and what to look for during the POC. So I highly encourage you to look at that. Also during the POC, if you ever want to talk to us, if you want to talk to product management about your results, about anything you want to talk about other customers are doing, reach out to your account team and have them contact me, Greg Chrisman at oracle.com, and I'll be happy to get on the phone with you and talk about your POC results, anything about that. So again, we'll put that out there. We'll talk about best practices as well. So any other questions we have here? I don't see anything yet. So I'm trying to think of any other questions that came up there were useful to discuss. One thing I will mention, and not really a question, more of a statement, is that if you're using encryption, our encryption works really well with our advanced compression, our advanced row compression. There's two types of encryption. There's a table space encryption, and there's the table space level, and there's the column level encryption. We encourage you to use the table space level encryption because we will actually compress before encrypt, so it maintains the compression. But those two do work very well together. The column encryption is actually we encrypted then compress with the column encryption, so it doesn't maintain the compression quite as well as the table space encryption. But if you're using encryption, we highly encourage using the table space encryption. It works very well with advanced compression, and often we see those two being used side by side. So I think that's all I have in terms of questions, nothing else coming in over the chat. This session will be available. The session will be available online, video. You can take a look at that later on once it's available. It takes about a week or two. That or I think
or any issues, please feel free to contact us, and we can do our best effort to improve based on your needs.
Very good. Thank you, Jesus. Definitely a great thing. And again, if you encounter something you don't quite understand and you think it's maybe not working that you think it should be, of course, you can always open SR, but also you can reach out to your account team, have them contact me, and we can talk about it. If you have suggestions for future enhancements or ways you'd like to see things change, again, or if you just want to talk about the other features of advanced compression, we'll probably cover those in some upcoming sessions with AskTOM, but we're available to talk about any of those things. If you reach out to the account team and just have them contact me, we can definitely schedule sessions about that. But otherwise, I want to thank everybody for attending. Jesus, Ajit, thank you for your time. We'll see you guys next month, and hopefully we'll have a lot more questions then, and some different questions to go through. And again, appreciate your time, and thank you everybody for attending.